Hi everyone, I'm thrilled that you are here. Have you ever wondered what a business owner does all day? Have you been curious as to how someone has the time to write a whole book? Not just a chapter, but an entire book. My guests answer these and other questions each week here on Rising Stories. I interview a business owner and author each week, and we chat about all aspects of being a business owner or being a writer. We touch on the best business practices as well as what they do during those off hours. Life is not always perfect, and sometimes we need to hear the ins and outs of someone else's life to understand our own. I have some great guests coming soon. One of them is here with us today. But before I introduce her, I want to take a moment and ask that you share this podcast with a friend. If you have heard a podcast that you know will touch a friend's life, please take the time and share it with them today. Rising Stories is easily found on iTunes in the podcast search bar or on the Stitcher app for Android users under Business Podcasts. You can also find me and the link to these shows on my Instagram at Corine Sandifer. It's no lie, I love Instagram. I love Instagram and I love the Instagram stories. And I enjoy posting things about my show and my own journey as a business owner. In fact, I'll be sharing some of my business tips with you in the coming weeks on this podcast. My guest today is Cheyenne Conrady. She is a business owner, model, artist, and writer who began her journey in journalism and is now a local Nashville artist who makes beautiful jewelry with a new Native American influence. We chat about how she is getting her jewelry into stores, her biggest challenges, and instead of the 3 things that she's loving, she shared with us the 3 things that she can't do. She is the kindest soul, and I enjoyed meeting her today. Here is my conversation with Cheyenne. We've been trying to connect and with schedules and everything, and I'm glad you're finally here. It's so
Me
exciting.
too. Thank you so much.
And you know, I originally was found you because you make jewelry here in the Nashville area, but in the course of checking out, what we're going to talk about today and finding out more about you, you just do all kinds of stuff. So what do you tell people that you do when people say, what do you do?
That's such a good question. I would definitely say that my jewelry line is my number one priority, and that's what I guess I would tell someone my full-time job is. But I had already had my jewelry business when I relocated to Nashville about 2 years ago, and for some reason, upon moving here, I just felt so inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit that it lives here and how much pride people take in the authenticity of their work and how so many things here are handmade or handcrafted or, locally sourced. And it made me want to make my business better. So I rebranded, I started handcrafting all of my own goods. And for some reason, taking on more with my business, instead of tiring me out, it made me want to start taking on more everywhere else and every other interest of my life. And so I started, let's see, what else have I done? I went to school for journalism. And upon graduating, I worked in PR for a little bit and found that wasn't really for me, which is actually when I started this business. But I didn't lose the passion for writing. So since then, I've been doing a lot of freelancing. I focus primarily on contributing to women's publications that cater to women and women's needs, women's psychology and things like that. And all of my focus on empowering other women and working with other women really sprouted from starting my own business. And I find as I get to know more women like you in this community, and as I get older, I'm able to appreciate what other women do and become so inspired by them so much that it makes me want to give back to that community specifically.
Yeah.
And it's so mutually beneficial.
And you've done so much. I mean, you're a writer and you've blogged and you've done, and you're a model. You've done some modeling. You're a business owner because of your jewelry making, and you sell. Do you still sell on Etsy?
Yes, I primarily like to use my website just because I've built it all myself. This is
Yes.
kind of an interesting anecdote. I never took a computer course in high school or in college, and I've never been I would never say I've been technologically challenged, but I had never definitely had the desire to build a website by any means.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I started my own business, I started it on my savings. And I didn't take out a loan
Wow.
because after being through school and everything, I wasn't interested in taking out any debt. So I started it entirely on my savings, and that meant not being able to pay a web designer to design my website for me. And I thought, I'm a very DIY kind of person. I'm
Mm-hmm.
very, as soon as I see something, I'm like, I bet I could do that better. So I thought, well, geez, this can't be that hard. And I spent about a week building my first website, which now looking back at it was probably just a god awful site. I mean, I
Well,
can't,
they've evolved. Yeah.
but they've evolved and I've evolved. I learned so much by being able to do it myself. But it took me about a week to make it, and I cried every day.
Oh, it's hard.
It's so funny how upsetting technology can be whenever you just can't figure something out, and
Yes.
there's no easy to find manual, and it was a great learning experience for me. But now I have a website that I'm very proud of, and I'm really glad that I built it because I can go in and edit it any
You
day.
can
I have that
do,
kind of freedom,
yeah.
which is nice, but it definitely came at a cost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I try to drive traffic to my website, but I am also on Etsy because I know, especially with seasons like the holidays coming up, people use websites like this to find gifts,
They do.
and
Yeah.
it broadens your reach a lot for things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so you do all kinds of, you do jewelry and you hand make those, like you put them
Yeah.
all
So
together.
the funny thing is, I never used to be a crafty type person. I never even made friendship bracelets and things like that when I was a girl. And it only began after I wasn't really fulfilled with my career in PR that I decided my real, I guess, spur of inspiration for starting my own business was I had come to the realization that I didn't like having a boss.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
really wanted to be my own boss. And so I thought, well, I should start a business. And so at first I was wholesaling jewelry, but it just wasn't that fun or exciting. And so actually what happened is I got a necklace from my wholesaler that when I opened it, I just didn't think was very good quality. And so I tried it on. I would always buy an extra piece for myself and wear it for a little bit to make sure that it didn't tarnish and just to
Mm-hmm.
see how it wore before I would sell it. And it broke the first day that I had it on. And I thought, this is so silly. I could do this so much better. And I wound up taking a chain off another old necklace and attaching it. And then a similar thing happened. I bought a piece of jewelry on Etsy for myself, and I got it, and it was broken, and I was able to fix it. And then I just thought, well, this doesn't seem that hard. And that was definitely a misconception. I was definitely not realizing what I was setting myself up for. But I eventually just I read through some tutorials online, and I made the pioneer trip to Michael's and filled up 2 carts with all the tools I thought I would need, and I taught myself. And now it's very rewarding to be able to make a piece of jewelry and sell it to someone and know that, I made every single inch of it and that they're going to enjoy it and wear it for hopefully a very, very long time.
Yeah. And do you find that it's kind of therapeutic too when you're doing?
Oh, yeah. I would say I didn't used to be a very focused person. And I didn't used to be a very organized person. I've always been creative, but I think the business side of having a business has really been maturing and the learning process for me that I needed because I've become a much more organized, much more business minded person. And
Mm-hmm.
my focus now that, I'm making something from head to toe, handmade, and I measure down to the millimeter and everything. It's really improved my focus all around in life. I would say it's definitely therapeutic, although my hands are usually very sore and I need to start doing some kind of physical therapy to balance that out. But I mean, it's just something I enjoy. I can work in the peace and quiet, and
Yeah.
it's great to finish something and be like, I did that. I made that.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
very empowering, especially for women. I think it just feels good to say, I did that on my own.
Yeah. And where do you find like your inspiration to make a different piece? And do different pieces for different seasons? Like, do you have like a fall season and a
You
spring.
know, I don't mean to, but I do think that I gravitate towards in the summer. I find myself making more things with color and things that are
Mhm.
lighter to wear and not so heavy on your neck. And then in the winter, I get really excited about getting to make, a double bolo or something. But I guess my inspiration for bolo ties, which is what my business has kind of landed on now, is it came about a year and a half ago when I first started hand making all my own goods. I had been making a bunch of stamped jewelry, which I still really enjoy. But I was looking at old family pictures that my grandma and grandpa had brought whenever they came to visit. And in some of them, they had some relatives that I do not know, but they had on some bolo ties because they were from, back in Oklahoma, way back in the day.
Right.
And I just thought, well, that's just a great looking piece of jewelry. It looks great on the men. It looks great on the women. That's so fun. I wonder why I've never seen one of those. And so I started looking them up on Etsy, and they didn't really exist on there. And when they did, they were a very, it was a vintage, very masculine looking piece. And so once again, I underestimated the workload and thought, well, this can't be that hard. So I bought my first little concho. It was a little longhorn steer, which is still on one of my bolo ties now. And I bought some vegan white rope because I didn't want to use animal skin. So I always use vegan suede or leather or whatever.
Hmm.
And made my first bolo slide, which was absolutely terrible. I
Oh no.
stabbed myself multiple times. I glued my hand to the bolo slide
Oh
and could not
no.
get it off. And I use industrial glue, so it was stuck on there pretty good.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. But it was a lot of fun, and the resulting piece just looked like a classic timeless piece that would last a long time.
Hmm.
And that was something that I had never felt like I had accomplished yet. And so I got very into it after that. And since then, I've seen bolo ties kind of rise in popularity. I wouldn't necessarily call it cultural appropriation, but I would say that they've become a lot more popular than they were
Yes.
when I was first making them. So I try to do things that are unique and stand out. And even if it's not as trendy, hopefully it is more lasting. So that's how I try to keep my inspiration flowing, is by making something I haven't seen yet. And sometimes that means I wind up wasting materials on something that does not turn out well and is very ugly. Or sometimes it turns out, something looks pretty good. And I'm like, hey, this is cool. I think that I can make this work.
And are you able to, like, if it doesn't work out, are you able to like disassemble it and maybe do it, use the pieces somewhere else or
Yeah, so that's
repurpose?
the great thing about jewelry. A lot of the materials are able to be repurposed. If it's not customized, you can typically disassemble and cut it up kind of like a car and
Mm-hmm.
reuse most of the pieces, which is
Yeah.
great. And I didn't really, when I first started making jewelry, I was very naive about it and I didn't really think of that. So every time I messed something up, I would usually throw it away. And that it was a lot of messing up whenever I first started. And then I finally realized, all I'd have to do is cut off the piece that I messed up and I could use all the rest of it. This is
Yeah.
so silly. I can't believe I've been doing this. And now it's bleeding into the rest of my life. I'm getting bad at being able to clean out my closet or anything else because I'm like, well, I could use this for something.
Yeah. I always think I'm going to repurpose something and then I never
Right.
do. And
Right.
so this year I'm just like, oh, I just tossed it all. Like if I
Right.
didn't love it,
Good
but
cleanse.
yes. And what's interesting is I was this summer I love to go junking and to yard sales, and I
Oh,
was at a
yeah.
yard sale and I saw a bolo tie. I'm from Texas, so we call them bolo ties. And I was like, oh, this just so
Yeah.
reminds me of my uncles. They would always wear those. So I was like, so I got it, and that's funny that I have been seeing a trend of
Yeah.
it coming back, and I think I love them. I think it looks great
I
on
do
everybody.
too, and I think they look great and they're super stylish, but they're also made of more lasting materials and it's not so fast fashion. So I think regardless of whether or not they're on trend, they'll always be
Hmm.
neat to me and they'll always remind me of where I came from. So that'll always be something that I look on fondly.
Yeah, and so you're from Oklahoma, and are
Yes, ma'am.
you a Native American Indian? Native
Yes, so
American?
I am half Native and Cherokee Native American, not Cheyenne, misleadingly. Um,
Okay.
that's the first question that people always ask me. They always ask me, "Are you Cheyenne Indian?" And I say, "Actually, no. I understand why you would think that, but." So I am about half Native American, and that's a mix of Creole and Cherokee, which Cherokee is very common in the state of Oklahoma.
Yes.
And I actually just learned this weekend on my trip to the Smoky Mountains that the other part of the United States where Cherokee people largely lived was in the Smoky Mountains, which I had no idea.
I don't know much about that, but I think there is there's
Yeah, and
another.
Tennessee is so full of history, which is something I love about it, very similarly to Oklahoma. It has so much history.
It does. It does. Yeah. Yeah. And so, how did you get into doing modeling? Was that something you did here in Nashville, or
Do what? Can you repeat that?
how did you get into modeling?
Oh, I first began modeling. This is going to sound really silly, but my senior year of high school, I quit my job as a waitress, and because I wasn't enjoying it, I believe I couldn't get off work for a college class, and I finally decided, I'm going to college. I'm going to be the first person in my family who has it's not something I'm giving up to serve pizza. So I quit my job feeling super empowered. And then, a week later realized, well, that also means that I quit making money.
Yes. Yeah.
So I did my first photo shoot in Tulsa, Oklahoma with a photographer, basically so I could start making gas money. And I just freelanced while I lived in Oklahoma all through college, and it helped me. I was getting paid a minimum wage job at college. I worked at a newspaper that I absolutely loved, but the pay was, college student minimum wage pay. Helped bump me up financially during that time. And then when I moved to Los Angeles, I kind of put pause on it while I was working in PR because I was working well over full time and didn't really need the money and didn't really have the time. And once I quit my job and decided I was going to use my savings for this business, I decided, well, I should start amping up the modeling again. So I did some for some clothing stores out there, just freelance. I guess I never took it seriously enough to really apply myself until I moved out here and met with an agency here and actually got signed and learned how the business side of it works, which I think now that I own my own business, I'm able to understand a lot better than I would have been able to when I was 16 anyway. So,
Right.
everything happens for a reason and everything happens on the right timeline, even whenever you didn't know or you wouldn't expect it.
Did you, by any chance, ever model for? Did you ever do print ads? Any print?
No, actually, anytime I've ever seen something of mine in print, I didn't know it was going to be there and I didn't approve it. So not yet, no.
Oh, wow. Wow. Well, you look a lot like a model that well, I think you're on the younger side, but Harold's used to use a lot of local models. I don't know if
Oh,
you
really?
are familiar with Harold's, but I used to work for them years ago, back in like right outside of college. And,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, because it's very, that store's very Southwestern. It would
Oh, how
have, yeah, or
cool.
it used to be. I mean, it started out like really preppy, like Ralph Lauren and
Oh,
Rough Hew. We used to have all kinds of like, um, you know, almost like Talbot looking
right,
clothes. And then it moved to the very Southwestern with the boots of course, that was the trend. And
right.
yeah, and so they had a couple models that looked, just the long dark hair, and it just looked good on their
Huh.
catalog. So I was
No,
like,
the
oh, you never
funny
know.
the
I
funny
just thought
thing
I'd ask.
is I am actually naturally blonde. Yeah.
Oh, no way! Yeah, because you've got beautiful long dark hair, which we'll show a picture of you. The show comes out. So Cheyenne, you are in stores in Nashville, which is really exciting.
Yes, ma'am. That was actually my big goal for this year. And I was having a difficult time of it because Nashville is such a great town in that it's very face to face. And people, they like to know who they're working with. They like to know who's making their stuff. And that's something I absolutely love about this community. However, still being somewhat new and not knowing that many people yet, as well as being someone who travels often, it took longer than I was hoping for to find the right home. And finally, just in the last couple of months, it kind of feels like everything's been happening. And I got in my first Nashville store, Top Knot Vintage, which is in East Nashville. And then right after that, I got placed in a store in Louisville, Kentucky called Block Party, which I'm really excited about. Louisville's a great city, and it's so close to Nashville, but it gives my jewelry a whole new audience, and so I'm really excited about that. I'm hoping to add a few more to the list, but not so many that I can't keep up.
Yeah. And so is it intimidating to do that? Like like what was your first experience? So you just kind of walked in and introduced yourself and
So originally, I've been trying to send out emails. Having a history in PR and journalism, I think, has made me somewhat uncomfortable with trying to sell myself, I guess.
mm-hmm.
And so, and I never want someone to feel pressured. I realize that it's a business, but it's very important to me that someone doesn't necessarily have to feel like I'm selling them something. And so I was trying to just reach out to these businesses, maybe make an appointment. And that's kind of how I learned that that's not really how Nashville likes to do business. Nashville likes to know who you are, see who you are, feel you out, know what's
Mm-hmm.
important to you. And so I started shopping in Top Knot Vintage a while back, and they have a bunch of products that I really like. And I had sent an email, I believe, and they hadn't gotten back to me, and I wasn't going to sweat it. And I went in to purchase some shorts or some jeans recently, and they happened to recognize me and said, you can bring in your jewelry to show us sometime. And that was how that eventually led to culminating to them stocking my stuff. And I got lucky with the store in Louisville in that they just checked out my website and agreed that we would be a great fit and made a large order with me, which was awesome. And I really appreciate that kind of trust from someone. It's definitely a little intimidating.
Yeah.
Because somebody's trusting you right off the bat. But I think a lot of times if you're feeling intimidated, it's probably a good thing, because it means if you can accomplish it, then that's going to be another building block for you.
Mm-hmm.
So getting over that hump was a good thing for me, and now I really don't feel so it doesn't feel like selling myself. It feels like selling my hard work, which you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And as someone who's like, when you're trying to, it is hard because you don't want to sell yourself, but at the same time, it's almost like you have something good, and you
Right.
want someone else to have it
Exactly.
as well.
And I'm also, I guess, a little overprotective. I don't really ever consider getting an assistant or a partner, although I'd love to have somebody else to package up boxes and do the parts of it that I don't really enjoy. I'm a little overprotective, at least at the current state. And so I want to do it all myself. And what comes with that is, putting a little piece of yourself in every piece of work. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to be selling yourself a little and letting people meet you and see how you work and what's important to you and everything. I'm becoming more comfortable with seeing how that's advantageous in any kind of business.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's so exciting, and I love all your pieces. I was looking through it all, and so and you also said you had some stamped items that you
Yes.
sell. What
Yes,
do those
ma'am.
look like? Are they like
So
bracelets or?
yeah, I can do cuffs, metal cuffs. You stamp on metal. I haven't learned how to do it on leather yet, but I stamp on metal.
Mm-hmm.
And I use a handheld stamping set, which I am coming to realize is very outdated, and many people have a machine. But, those kinds of things are an expense. And now that I've been able to finesse it by hand, I'm not sure that I'll ever make the convenient change. But so I use a small stamping set, and you stamp each letter or number or symbol individually. It's on a metal stick that you hammer into the
Mm-hmm.
metal. And so I can do that on necklaces, earrings, cuffs, things like that. And that's actually been a really rewarding and fulfilling part of my work. It doesn't really fit with my Native American theme necessarily, but it's not something that I can give up just because I'm able to make such personal pieces, and I'm able to, be a part of someone's story. For Christmas last year, I got to make anniversary ornaments for couples, and a mother bought one for her daughter who just had her first baby. and I got to
Oh,
make matching necklaces for long distance best friends who'd been best friends for 30 years and things like that. And
wow.
it's just being able to make something that you know that somebody's going to treasure and that's going to bring two people closer is something I never even really considered would happen with jewelry.
Hmm.
But once I started being able to do that, I thought, well, this really feels good. This is a great thing to do. So I always look forward to the holidays because I know that I'm going to get to do things like that.
Yeah. And that's just, you're making something that people are going to treasure,
Right,
which is really
exactly.
cool.
Exactly.
Ornaments they'll have forever. I mean, we have ornaments that we bought,
Yeah, it's so
yeah,
funny how
for
long you hang on to
years.
ornaments. I
Yeah.
have some ornaments that aren't even necessarily cute or pretty, but for some reason they go on the tree every single year without fail.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely
And
going to check out your ornaments and see what that would be fun, fun to create. So tell me, what is your biggest challenge in running your business these days?
I would say my biggest challenge is probably staying organized or staying on track. I've always been a very creative person, but I haven't always been a very organized person. So that part of running a business was very new to me. And while I've become more adept, I do think that whenever it's all on you, it's wonderful because whenever things go well, it's all you and you can be very proud. But whenever something goes poorly or not the way that you wanted or anything else, that's also all on you. Um,
Right.
and so that kind of pressure can sometimes lead me to not staying as organized as I should or really beating myself up if I become a little disorganized. So I think what I try to work on the hardest is making sure that I am staying on the right path and on the right track and that I'm moving towards something because it's easy to just get caught up in making some orders every day and never really moving forward, but that's not really growing a business. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of what I've been working on this year is not just getting in a rut. And so I've been working on trying to get new stores and trying to do new pop-up opportunities and things like that. And now I've really loaded myself up for a busy 3 months, but it's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that fun? I mean, it's fun, and then it's like, oh my gosh, what did I do to myself?
I know it's yeah, and but I guess for someone like me who I can be very solitary, I really enjoy being at home. I can be very antisocial. I can have a lot of anxiety about trying to sell myself or my items. So I think it's good for me to give myself, a swift kick and get out of the nest. And I definitely feel out of the nest now.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. What is your favorite app if you on your phone that you use the most or
Um, well, like I said, not being a naturally organized person, I wouldn't necessarily say it's my favorite, but I would say the one that really contributes to my day that I use is called Wunderlist. And it's basically just an app for making lists, which is, I'm a very type B person. So lists I just really don't enjoy, but I've come to realize that in running a business, you need to be able to keep track of everything.
hmm.
And especially when you're running a business that's mostly online, things happen 24 hours a day. I'm not always up
Right.
in my studio to jot something down. Sometimes I get an email or an idea and it may be a bit until I can get to it, but I need to make sure I don't forget it. So
Hmm.
Wunderlist is great because you can create lists and then create sub lists underneath them and you can make notes and things like that. So it's an easy way to stay organized and it's simple and on my phone. So it's not too big of a commitment for someone like me. It's easy to just throw this on there and I'll get back to it later.
Hmm. I can imagine, yeah, because we all juggle as business owners. We're all
Yes.
juggling. We're like checking emails,
Yes.
and I may get an email from a potential guest, and it's like, oh yeah, I need to jump on that. But then I'm not in my office. I'm like driving
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
And so, do you type that into your Wonder List?
I try to just be sure to type in, to at least make the time to type in something that I know I'll remember. So if I get an email from someone and I
Hmm.
know, well, if they email me like, well, I'm out at dinner and I know I won't get to it till tomorrow, but I need to write it down or else I'll forget, then I'll just jot down, email back John or whatever.
Yeah.
And usually that jogs my memory pretty good. But Wunderlist also allows you to go in and add notes to an item. So then when I get in the car and I have a little bit more time, I might go and jot down some ideas just so I don't forget them the next day. Because I tend to come up with ideas all the time, but they don't always get written down unless I have something nearby I can do that on. And so it's great for me to keep track of little like spurts of ideas or questions I have and don't want to forget to ask.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure is useful even outside of a business. You know, you need lists for everything all the time. It's just useful.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Lists.
Yeah.
I have lists for everything.
Yep.
And you know, I'm terrible because I'm still from, you know, I am tactile. So I really love drawing, you know, writing lists. And I have
That's how my spouse is. He's the same way.
Yeah. I have like my, you know, my day timer and my bullet journaling and all the stuff
That's
that
so
I do.
great.
And it's like, but then I also have my calendar on my phone, which is good because it is a smartphone. So it'll remind me, you know, hey, you've got something coming up.
Yeah, and on Wunderlist, you can add like due dates, or you can set an alarm to remind you about something, and all of those things are great for me because I like putting the work on something else to remind me sometimes. Sometimes it's a relief for me to just be able to say, okay, this thing will be sure to remind me tomorrow so I won't forget. And then I can free my mind of that space and move on to whatever the next thing is and give it my full attention, which is kind of hard in this day and age to do if you have to keep your brain running full momentum all the time and don't have something to help you out, then things are going to slip through the cracks.
Absolutely. Yeah. That happens in my business. But I try not to. I try to keep on track. I'm going to check that out, Wunderlist. Yeah. I think it's one that my husband was talking to me about, so I'll have to check that out.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So being that you are in Nashville, and I've been trying to, whenever I get a Nashville guest, I try to ask them, and I'm glad I just remembered, what is your favorite restaurant in Nashville? Or what was the last one you went to?
Oh gosh, there's so many good ones.
I know.
The thing about Nashville, and I try to tell our guests this before they come and visit, is you are going to eat your way through this town.
Yes.
And I don't care what kind of diet you're on or what you thought your New Year's resolution was, because you're in Nashville now. Yeah.
You're going to have to eat.
I love that about here. I love eating. I absolutely love to cook. So I get some real enjoyment out of getting to try all the new things here. One of my favorite spots is Margot in East Nashville.
Oh, yeah.
It's very low key, and they always have delicious food, but it doesn't feel super fancy, and it's not super crowded, which is something that I appreciate. Being from a small town, sometimes Nashville can feel pretty big to me or pretty busy. And so it's nice to find places where you can just feel comfortable and you can just go in whatever you have on, and you know that you're going to eat a meal that you're going to like and you're going to have a nice time.
Yeah.
I also like, honestly, my favorite place, and this is probably going to sound kind of funny, but my favorite restaurant here is Sperry's.
Oh,
and I know that might sound, I mean, we go probably once every couple weeks, and there is rarely anyone in there that is there's rarely anyone in there my parents' age, much less younger. But I love that about that place. I love the way that it's decorated. I love that they haven't changed it. I love that the menu is always the same and I can depend on it. It honestly, it's one of those places where when I go in, I feel like home. And we stumbled across Sperry's after we found our first house here and kind of had our first celebratory dinner there. And they had the Christmas tree up and things like that. And it just, now every time something good happens, we always have a celebratory dinner at Sperry's. And, you know, you always recognize all the people that work there. They've worked there forever. It feels like home. So it may not be the coolest place, but it's definitely my favorite place. I like it enough that I don't take other people there whenever they come visit us so that they don't know about it. I hide it and protect it.
You protect it. Yeah.
I protect it.
Well, yeah.
And I would say the adventurous place I like is probably 404. Have you ever been there?
No.
It's a renovated storage container. I know that sounds odd. It's
but is it bigger than a bread box storage?
It's not very big.
It's not very big. Okay.
No, it's pretty small. There's only a few tables in there, so you always want to make a reservation.
Oh, I know where that is. Yeah, and it has a hotel next to it or inside of it.
Yes.
Airbnb or something.
Yeah, that's it. And they always have great cocktails. They have adventurous food, which is fun for whenever you feel like trying something new or that you can't pronounce. But it's always good, and it's always a nice time, and it's another one of those places that's pretty low key. Since it's so small, there's not really room for it to get really busy and loud. So
And it's in the Gulch.
I enjoy it. Yes, ma'am.
Yep. I know exactly where that is. Yeah, I've passed by there, and I'm like, I would like to check that out.
It's really neat.
Yeah,
it's a neat place.
So, are you a reader? Do you like to read?
I absolutely love to read. Yes, whenever I was a little girl, my parents used to, I know this is the opposite of what most children would say, but my parents used to punish me for reading too much because I would bring my book to the dinner table, and they thought it was so rude because, dinner table, you don't sit there. I guess it's somewhat the same as a child sitting on their phone at dinner now.
Exactly.
It's rude and it's your time to spend together. And it would just drive my parents up the wall.
Put the phone down.
Always,
and I would book down in your case.
Yeah, it would just drive them nuts. And it would also drive the librarian at my school nuts because I would show up, I would drop off my book and it would have, cheese puff dust or something all over the pages. But it was just because I just didn't want to part ways.
Yeah. So what are you reading these days?
Well, actually, I have just started reading a biography about Nikola Tesla. It's called Tesla, the Inventor of the Electrical Age. And I found him, this is completely separate from obviously any of my walks of life, but I have just found him to be so inspiring. He was an inventor and he tried new things that sometimes went well and sometimes didn't. And he had ideas stolen from him and, he was misquoted and all sorts of things that happen to everybody, whether you're a business owner or not. And just the way that he succeeded anyway, and the way that he carried on his life, and the way that even though he wasn't the most recognized, he didn't fight for attention. I find all of those things really inspiring and fascinating. So I found myself oddly being super inspired by a very long gone man of science somehow, even though it's completely different from what I do.
I would have never guessed that you would have picked a book like that.
I wouldn't either.
In honestly, just the few minutes that I've known you, that we've known each other.
It's honestly bizarre. And now what happened is I stumbled across an episode of TV that talked a lot about him. And it really resonated with me because they just talked about, some of the things he went through and how he's never been as recognized. And a lot of his ideas were stolen from him. And I've had all of those things happen to me before. And it was just so inspiring to see that someone who literally knew he was changing the world and was doing something so much bigger than himself, like the class and the concentration and just the way that he handled himself, I thought, well, that's a good lesson for anybody, but especially women, because women can feel so competitive and so undermined. I mean, it's a great reminder to, keep moving forward and to always be the best version of yourself and take the higher road. And so now I found myself oddly relating to someone I probably couldn't be more different than, but...
That's amazing that you are like, how they say, oh, he's a Renaissance man and he does, it's like you are totally that. Just like,
that's so sweet. Thank you.
Much stuff and just so talented. Like when you were saying, I love to cook, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she's like the whole package. It's just amazing.
Thank you so much. Amazing. That's so sweet of you. That's so sweet of you. Well, there are definitely some things I can't do. Let's see.
Yeah, what can't you do? Let's talk about those. Tell me 3 things you can't do.
Tell you 3 things I can't do. Okay, number 1, I'm scared to death to ride a bicycle. Will not get on one. Will not learn.
Bicycle?
Cannot ride a bike. And
no
the crazy thing is what my father and my spouse Nick and what everyone always tells me is they say, what if something happens someday and your only getaway is a bike? And I say, well, then I'll run.
I can run.
I don't understand. But I'm just terrified of them for some reason. It does not make any sense to me. The aerodynamics of staying up on those 2 thin wheels. I mean, I see kids in our neighborhood riding around on them and I think, don't you know that's not safe?
I think, do you just like psych yourself up? Like
Well, I will say this. I used to be able to ride a bike and I fell off once and broke my head open. Okay. And so that's probably, that was when I was much longer and I've never gotten back on one since then.
I don't think I would either. Yeah.
And what's funny is I'll do things like zip line and I'll drive ATVs up the mountain, but I will not get on a bicycle.
Wow.
Let's see. What else can't I do? I can't be on time. That's something I'm really trying to work on really, really hard, because I think that that's a really unprofessional thing, but it's just so hard for me. I feel like even when I leave extra time, I can't be on time. I find there must be a hidden procrastinator gene somewhere in my DNA that just won't allow me to ever be on time.
I think, I think that's a true thing. I think there are people that have that where they
Yep.
just, whenever they're a girlfriend of mine, like I may even tell her 30 minutes beforehand and she'll get there, but then she'll be like, oh, I need to go run do this. And then
Right.
she ends up being late still.
Right.
Ends up being late
Yeah,
still.
and it bothers me so much when other people do it, which I've really gotten to see better now that I've started my own business and started working with people. Now I know how inconsiderate it can feel if someone doesn't respond to your email, or if someone doesn't make you a priority enough to show up on time or whatever. I mean, I understand that now in a way I never did before, so I'm really trying to work on that. Mm-hmm. And what else? It's very hard for me to get rid of clothing. I would say cleaning out my closet is something that I am just can't seem to do, because as soon as I get something out, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to find a place to wear this. That's why I'm not getting rid of this. So I've started to, I've tried some different closet techniques, like putting all of your clothes backwards in the closet. And then once you've worn it once, you can turn it back the right way. And after 6 months or a year, if something hasn't been turned around or worn, then, it must not be that important to you.
Right.
And things like that. So I've been trying some different techniques the last few years, trying to not to hold on to everything and make room for new things. I've tried, if I buy something new, if I have anything similar to it, I donate it, get rid of it, etc.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm with you. It's hard for me to get rid of stuff. And what's crazy is like recently I decided one day I wanted a, jean, like a chambray dress. Mm-hmm. This was like last summer. So I bought a chambray dress, found it like at a thrift store or consignment shop or something. And I was like, this is so outdated. And now now everybody's wearing them. Like, but I got rid of it. Why did I get rid of it? Because I loved it, but it fit well. And
you got to hang on to the stuff that makes you feel good. Yeah. That's honestly the most important thing. And I think, as soon as you get rid of something that you wish you'd kept, it. You can feel it, because all of a sudden, every time you go into your closet, you're thinking, well, I sure wish I had that one thing, because that would be perfect for this or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This has been
Thank you so much for having me.
Getting to know you, and how exciting. And I can't wait to see what is in store for you moving forward, and I am going to go check out some of these stores here in town.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to go check out your jewelry, and
thank you so much for having me and for your time, and thank you for having a place for women like me to reach other women like me. It's so inspiring, and like I said before, it can be the most inspiring thing, can be having someone else be inspired by you. That can be so uplifting, and it can be such a confidence boost, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheyenne was a great guest. If you are in the Nashville area or visiting from out of town, don't forget to check out her jewelry line. The name of the store and all of the information shared on this podcast will be on the show notes at CorineSandifer.com. And if you know someone you'd like to hear interviewed on Rising Stories, please send me a message or leave me a comment at CorineSandifer.com. Music is by Ben Sound, and this podcast has been sponsored by Brentwood Life Coach. Thanks so much for listening to Rising Stories. Take care and keep rising in your own story.